Those are hard to write. I know that. Thank you all for being here. Thanks to everyone at the MFA program for inviting me and tolerating my presence for the last 3 days. I'm going to read an essay from near the end of my book. This is, it would be easy to call this a memoir, but I resist that word because it generally sets up the expectation that something interesting has happened to you. And I don't mean that anything has. So these are, I call this a collection of essays, but they have a great deal to do with one another. They cover time from when I'm 5 to when I'm about 33. But all of them kind of stand alone, I hope. And this is from when I've emerged from the difficulties of adolescence and am a young man living in Chicago. So other than that, you don't really need to know anything. Except it's called The Goldfish History, so I will tell you the title. Hope is a goldfish in a plastic bag of water. The weight of the bag in your hands, how the cold bundle must be cradled to prevent jostling the poor creature inside. The transparency of the bag, how white your hands look through the water, the plastic wrinkles that gather around the ridges of your fingers. The goldfish itself, which isn't really gold or just gold. It bobs around, and if you're driving home from the fish store, riding beside your roommate, there's the inevitable moment when the fish will ease into his surroundings, float to the bottom of the bag, resting in the warm palm of your hand, and as the car rounds a curve, you feel the flutter of his translucent tail against your skin through the plastic. This goldfish meant hope because we hoped the one in our bag would be one to survive. Not just 3 weeks, but years, the way goldfish are supposed to. We hoped it wasn't one with that goldfish parasite called ick, short for ichthyop. I always have a hard time saying this. Ichthyriopia is a really long word. Ichthyopterius. But everyone thinks is ick because it's a parasite, which is gross. We hoped we wouldn't have to flush the fish in a few days if we found him with his pale belly turned toward the ceiling of the water. We hoped that buying all this fish stuff wasn't wasting our money. But because of the delicacy involved, floating the bag in the new bowl for an hour to allow the fish to adjust temperatures, treating our Chicago tap water with mysterious chemical drops, the goldfish was hope. This fragile thing who was dependent on us and our care, silent and colorful and ours to name. I can't remember if it was my roommate Kim or me who first thought of getting a goldfish. And I can't remember who suggested his name, Rufus, though it was probably me, after Rufus Wainwright, our favorite singer at the time, and the man I called my boyfriend, because I had the biggest and most hopeless of crushes on him, and because I didn't have an actual boyfriend. I used to say that Rufus the man brought me more pleasure than any of the men I'd actually dated. His picture was taped to the refrigerator door. I owned all his albums, went to every nearby performance, that kind of thing. Rufus the fish was always supposed to have a companion, another fish we planned to name after a cute actor from some TV show, whose name I can't remember, but we never made it back to the fish store. So on a bright Sunday afternoon in Chicago in March, Kim and I ripped open a sack of brown gravel and dumped an inch in Rufus's new glass bowl. The guy at the fish store had steered us away from the pointy plastic seaweed and gave us instead a clipping of some soft green vine, an actual plant, that coiled through the water like a spiral staircase. We also got a chunk of driftwood instead of one of those pink plastic castles or bubbling sunken treasure chests. The moment we untied the watery sack and poured Rufus into his bowl, we stared at him swimming around, and it felt good, because it was something we could share, and something that we needed. Kim and I had been best friends for 5 years, since our freshman year of college. After I graduated a year ahead of her, I moved to Chicago. A year after that move, one weekend when she was visiting, I came out to her. She was the first person to ever hear me say, "I am gay." When I told her, we were standing in a gay bar. In the women's restroom of the gay bar, a bar we'd been to several times before that night. In the private bathroom, giant mirrors stood all around us, with their backs against the walls. As I told Kim what I had to tell her, I watched our dim and infinite reflections do exactly what we were doing. Before finally speaking those words, I had known I was gay, but wasn't ready to admit it. Before that, I knew I was gay, but made myself date girls because I didn't want to be. Before that, for almost all of my teenage years, I thought I might be gay and was afraid, so I prayed every night for it to be taken away. And before that, I didn't know I was gay, but I knew I was different, and I didn't want to be that either. At the time when I had to offer a reason for picking up and moving to Chicago, with some savings, my car, and 2 splitting boxes crammed too full of books, I said I wanted to live in a big city. Only later would I see it more precisely as looking for a place big enough to get lost in, with space to figure out if I wanted to allow myself to be honest. Coming from the Missouri suburbs, Chicago felt limitless, the way it probably feels for any 22-year-old looking for something. Even so, those possibilities felt private and singular, like finding something everybody else had overlooked, a quarter waiting and shining right there on the sidewalk. Oh my God, was Kim's reaction in that bathroom, dance floor music thumping through the door. Even in a gay bar, the news that your best friend is gay can come as a surprise. A cigarette burned between her fingers. She leaned against the tiled counter. Her round face turned pink. Why didn't you ever tell me before? I haven't been keeping it from you, I said. I'm still figuring it out myself. Despite all evidence to the contrary, because I'd spent so long denying I was gay, she believed me because that was her job. If I could tell anyone, I could tell her, was the thinking. And not just because she was my best friend, but because she was also a friend to all gay men, it seemed. Every other man she knew was gay. She learned how to smoke, drink, dance, and make fake IDs from the gay hustlers she hung out with since high school. Besides the surprise she felt, she also knew that I needed her. So 20 days later, she drove 300 miles to Chicago with her own car full of boxes, piled them on the floor of my studio, and we waited together for the lease to begin at our new 2-bedroom apartment. At the beginning, Rufus hated me. He hid whenever I walked in the front door, darting off and hovering behind those heavy seaweed leaves. It didn't even seem possible to hide in a goldfish bowl, a place where everything is out in the open, but he found the way. Though he never hid from Kim. Even my goldfish doesn't want to look at me, I'd complain, slumping next to her on the sofa, mostly joking. She was single too, and we spent our entire weekends drinking whiskey and searching for men. Maybe it's your voice, she said. We would have been uncorking red wine, a movie playing on TV that we talked through the whole thing, eating something covered in cheese. I don't think goldfish have ears. Well, it's just your presence thing. You probably make him nervous. And with my photocopied spreadsheet grocery lists, meal calendars, and rules about ashtrays and coasters, I made more than just Rufus nervous. You know you live in a smothering routine when an idea like, let's get a goldfish, sounds exciting. Every time he hid, I thought about his view of things from in there. Even if he did have ears, I imagined his bowl as completely silent, scary and muffled, like sitting at the bottom of a swimming pool. And how strange to see us in his water, which must have looked to him the same as the glass that held it, which also must have looked the same as the air surrounding it, the air that Kim and I moved through. Did he think all of us were underwater, part of the same big thing? There was probably clear separation, and in here and out there, but there wasn't any visible boundary, sort of an edge to feel but never to see. The only time he didn't hide from me was in the morning when I fed him, and it was my favorite time to watch him. After opening the curtains in the front window, I uncapped the small can of fish food and pinched some between my fingers. I'd let them spring open over the bowl and watch the clump of flakes fall. Yellow, brown, and orange. The thin bits of food exploded over the surface, covering the whole bare face of the water as he ascended. His white mouth closed over the bits, his orange body wiggling and twisting.